Good evening. Welcome to the last board meeting of this decade. All right. We want to welcome you to the Beaverton School District Business Meeting for Monday, December 16th, 2019. We ask that you all silence your cell phones at this time and take any personal conversations you may have out into the lobby. At this time, we're going to have the flag salute, and we are going to have Raga, our kid governor, start us off.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to ask our board members, do you have any changes to the agenda at this time? All right, with that, we're going to start off with our public recognition. Ann?
We'd like to invite Raga Mandala to join us up front. We'll be celebrating her achievement as Oregon's Kid Governor. Raga is a 5th grade student at Jacob Wismer Elementary School and was recently selected as Oregon for 5th graders managed by the Oregon Secretary of State's office. She was surprised by Deputy Secretary of State Rich Vial and Director of Civics Education Mary Beth Herkert at a special assembly November 20th. When asked about her, her teacher Meredith Brundage says, Raga is an exceptionally hard-working student who campaigned to become Oregon's Kid Governor of 2020. She was selected as one of the top 7 finalists from all over the state. She ran on the platform of transitioning the homeless into permanent housing. She raises money for charities to help the homeless through her company, Raga's Fun Kitchen. She is very deserving of this position and will do a great job as Oregon's Kid Governor. Congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting and giving me an opportunity to speak here. I feel very honored and fortunate that I got elected as Oregon's Kid Governor for the year 2020. During my one-year term, I'll be focusing on implementing my 3-point plan for the community issue of homelessness. I would like to briefly share with you the reason I picked homelessness as a community issue. About 2 summers ago, we were driving home from a smoothie place and stopped at a traffic light. There was a person holding a sign and at that intersection. For some reason, I got very scared of that person and tried not to make eye contact. My mom rolled down the window and offered him one of the smoothies we had with us. I could not help but make eye contact at that point. He was very happy and grateful. A few months later, looking at my interest in cooking, my mom took me to a transition project shelter in downtown Portland. A group of people from an organization called Kinnaman Foundation were cooking and serving food at the shelter. When we got there, I got very nervous and asked my mom to take me back home. I'm glad she didn't because after going inside the shelter and cooking and serving food to the people there, I actually felt great. I knew I did something good, and that was very satisfying. Later on, I came to know about Join Portland. It's an organization that helps the homeless population transition into permanent housing. I visited the Join Portland and talked to the coordinators there. I felt very connected to their mission, and since then I've been hosting fundraisers to raise money for them with my cooking. If I didn't make eye contact with the person on the corner of the street, or if I didn't go inside the shelter, I would probably continue to feel terrified of the homeless. But based on my experiences, I realized that the homeless people are not scary, but they're just normal people going through difficult times. I feel that nobody deserves to live on the streets, and that everyone deserves to live with safety and dignity. I firmly believe that learning about homelessness is the necessary first steps toward eliminating this issue. In my term as Oregon's Kid Governor, I look forward to spreading awareness on homelessness and motivate my fellow 5th graders to look for ways they can help too. I'm thankful to Ms. Mary Beth Herkert and the others in the Secretary of State's office, Chapin
this time, we'd like to recognize our Beaverton Student Advisory Committee for an update. Heidi? Hello?
There you go.
So I'm the current co-president of the Beaverton Advisory Board.
Thank you, Jennifer. Right there.
Oh, right there.
There.
Oh, okay.
I am the current co-president of the Beaverton Student Advisory Committee.
I am the current secretary.
Since our last meeting, we had a dinner with the school board, and it was a really good experience. We got to have some one-on-one time with some of you guys, and that was very insightful. And during our last meeting with the committee, we decided
We had an open discussion about how we wanted to impact our community, our school district. And after talking about all the different issues that we were facing at our school, we decided that mental health was something that we all really wanted to focus on and to have an awareness campaign throughout the year. So we look forward to doing that. We're doing some critical research right now, reaching out to our peers, looking at different ways that we can effectively help people. We're really excited on what we're going to do.
And we meet this Wednesday and are going to be taking the next steps on deciding how to execute that to see if we can solve any issues with mental health.
Well, we appreciate you being here with us. We know it's a busy time of year, and thank you for the dedication you have to student advisory. And we really appreciate having the member on the boundary committee doing the extra look at that as well. But the board looks forward to meeting with you again. Are there any questions? Well, again, thanks very much for being with us this evening. Appreciate it. Now I'd like our president of the BEA, Sarah Schmidt, to share some comments.
Good evening, saving paper here. Good evening, Chair Timchuk, Superintendent Grutting, and members of the board. My name is Sarah Schmidt. I am the president of the Beaverton Education Association. And thank you for the change to the agenda. I really appreciate having a little bit of time set aside so that I don't feel like I'm taking away from our families and students that are here to speak. So I want to talk a little bit tonight about the power of partnership and how this can guide us through the next few months of the school year, I guess next year officially. I'm really grateful for the opportunities for community engagement that we've had from the Student Success Act process. I know a lot of folks really appreciate that this is a new territory for us and we're doing some things differently, holding parent meetings in native languages, reaching out authentically to members of our community, listening to the concerns of parents, students, and staff. And I think in order for us to really truly serve our community, we have to know them. So I'm appreciative of that process. I attended a few meetings recently that I want to speak to about partnerships and where some of this work has taken us this year. I recently attended one of the meetings of the high school behavioral health task force, and I really appreciated that promising process of calling on the rich expertise of our amazing professionals that are in our system. Their daily experiences with students and their creativity and their compassion is going to drive us forward. So thank you for establishing that process. And I know Danielle's done a lot of great work with her team on rolling that out. Last week I attended a panel at the Oregon Health Forum with Leslie Rogers, one of our TOSAs, to learn about how health professionals can partner with education professionals to yield better results and solutions for our students and families. It was also another very promising event. At BEA, we are launching a task force to look at doing some work around racial and social justice within our association, hoping to strengthen some connections in our community, work on racial and social justice causes, and also help facilitate the examination of our own practices as educators and how we can better lift up our marginalized communities within our association. So there's a lot of things. I feel like we're in the middle of a lot of things that are ongoing right now. and it's hard to kind of mark the progress when you're in the middle of it. But I want to remind everyone that we see all of these things that are happening at our level. Our educators that are in the classrooms every day might not see that movement, and they're still turning themselves inside out every day for their students, getting stretched really thin and don't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. So we can keep communicating to folks along the way about what's happening. I think that will go really far. So on that note, I will wrap up by acknowledging our educators who are working with our kids every day, and I'm talking about BEA members, our classified colleagues, principals, everyone who's looking at those students' eyeballs every day and knows their names and their stories. We can't thank them enough, so I just wanted to wrap up by telling our members and everybody out there, thank you, you matter, the work you're doing is incredibly important, and our students are so lucky to have you. So winter break is almost here. I hope that everyone gets that much needed pause and we're refreshed for the new year. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. As the president of OSEA, I wanted to remind folks that this time of year is especially important and sometimes hard for many of our families, whether they're coworkers or students that we serve. As members of OSEA, we try to give back in many ways, as possible. Last month, we had a Habitat for Humanity build that had members of OSEA and the BEA working side by side for our community. We collected items for the help center at our last chapter meeting, and the transportation department built an entire sped bus with donations as well for the help center. Our chapter was able to provide a donation for the Presence with Partners program that serves over 250 union members and their families from the Portland metro area on Saturday. Each person got a hot holiday meal, a chance to meet Santa Claus, choose a family game, a ball, a blanket, along with 3 stuffed animals and 3 to 4 toys for each child. We've been sending members from OSEA as volunteers to this amazing program for over 5 years, and it always warms my heart and starts the holiday season off right for me, being able to see these excited children and very grateful families and parents. Sometimes we see our BSD students there and their families as part of unions in our area that are members in need. OSEA members are usually the lowest paid staff in the district. How wonderful it is that even with difficult financial circumstances, they still find ways to give. And giving back where we can is something that OSEA members always strive to do. So at this time, I'll ask that all members of our community give what they can, support those that need a little boost, be patient with others, that one's key right now, and check in on our neighbors. Thank you to our school board members for serving our Beaverton community. I hope that you all have the opportunity to enjoy your friends and family over the winter break. Thank you to all of our members that will be working over the break. We'll be thinking of them. And we'll see you in the new year when we start bargaining for OSEA members. Thank you.
Okay, this time we're going to start public participation. And we're trying a new format this evening because we've had so much public participation in the last. We want to try to get to everyone we can. So you're going to be limited to 2 minutes, and I'm really going to, at 2 minutes, ask you to stop. If there's something else that you need to say, you can put it in writing to us or give it to us in writing, but just so we can try to get to everyone this evening. We're going to have 45 minutes if we need it. And if we don't get to everyone in 45 minutes, you are welcome to stay to the end of our school board meeting when we'll have another 15 minutes of participation. If you would like, there's yellow cards. Vice Chair Simpson is going to call them up, so we'll call them 2 at a time so you can be ready to come up. And please do not name any employee by name or have any complaint. This is not the format for that. And with that, we look welcoming our first.
Sarah Duncan, followed by Annika Reed.
My name is Sarah Duncan. I'm an early learning elementary TOSA and the Title I coordinator here in the Beaverton School District. I'm here to thank you for investing in early learning and specifically our pre-K classrooms. I want to let you know this investment is no small matter. Our team has been on a steady, steep, and fast path to understand the world of early learning. We have relied heavily on our many partnerships who have held our hand along the way. Our developmentally appropriate program model is reflected and consistent in each one of our classrooms. What we have found is this model is working for children and families. We are seeing enormous success in our former pre-K students who are now in kindergarten. These children who would not have had access to high quality pre-K experience without your investment would have a different school story. Rather than being a child who quickly escalates, these students are classroom leaders and have the skills and behaviors to successfully learn alongside their peers. There is so much to learn from our pre-K model that is transferring to school success, and it is worth noting as we work to re-envision kindergarten. While I know each of you is an advocate for early learning, we also want our community to understand our why. Across the United States, our local and national leaders are beginning to understand the economic, political, and social impact of investing in our youngest children and their families. And it is highlighted in a 73-minute documentary titled No Small Matter. On January 30th, our team is hosting a community viewing at Mountainside High School from 6 to 8 p.m. And we would like to officially invite you and hope you will invite others to this Beaverton community viewing. We hope you will not only be proud of the investment you are making, but also be moved to grow our impact. Thank you.
We're gonna go over to Robin Carr, followed by Heather Hellman.
Good evening. My name is Robin Carr, and I'm here with Nancy Tabanito and Robert Blanding. We represent Beaverton Friends of Music tonight, and we would like to thank the School Board Planning Committee for their clear guidance to administrators regarding middle school scheduling objectives, including a common middle school experience, developmentally appropriate class length, a schedule to meet state PE requirements, allow student choice, quality electives, and equitable access. We give our public support for these objectives and express appreciation for the transparency of the middle school boundary process. We value these communications as a demonstration of the district's commitment to build trust and accountability with the community. We would like the board to know that we are grateful for the work and leadership of Superintendent Grotting and BSD administrators. He offered in August to communicate with us on a regular basis regarding the middle school schedule. He has done that, and those communications with Dawn and his teaching and learning administrators have been valuable. Thank you to all of the BSD board, administrators, teachers, and classified staff for your dedication and hard work each day for students and families. Thank you for the commitment and time and efforts for our students. We wish you a happy holiday season, and we look forward to a continued partnership with you in the coming year. Thank you.
We have Heather Hellman, followed by Sandra Linehan.
Hi, I'm Heather. Thanks for allowing me to speak again this week. Green. Light green? Yeah.
Impressive. Right. You'll get bright green.
I have some real concerns about the common middle school experience and the equity that the district values so much, especially as it relates to the closing of Raleigh Hills middle school program. You have 5 pillars of equity: partnership, people, place, policy, and practice, and Raleigh Hills really is an example of those 5 pillars, and so it seems a little short-sighted for the district to close that option while allowing other options to remain open. We bring multiple perspectives together for the underserved community. Our school took it upon ourselves as a parent group, and with Jane Unger, our community outreach and social support liaison, we brought in community members to provide backpacks for students that need extra food support. We now distribute 35 backpacks to families. And again, that was because we brought on St. Cecilia's Church to fill those backpacks for us. We also did a winter warm-up drive and are providing food boxes. We do a lot to make sure that the underserved part of our community is included. We reflect diversity. We're in the top 30% of diversity in the state, and we have 18 languages spoken there. We provide a safe and inclusive, affirming place, as you say, and in fact, kids that are outside of the Raleigh Hills boundaries have been able to attend when they were having problems at Whitford and other middle schools. A place was made for them where they could be safe. You have a policy to articulate vision for equity, but we're not seeing a lot articulated about what this common middle school experience means, and so that's concerning. Also, you asked that we practice to eliminate the gap between students, and we do that. We provide an outdoor experience for all students. We provide a play that every student can be a part of, and so I would just ask you to reconsider this decision.
Sandra Linehan, followed by Nadia Hassan.
Okay. Good evening, thank you. My name is Sandy Linehan, and I'm a proud teacher of Beaverton School District and have been for 20 years now, going on more, I hope. Living and working in this area that I love to call home. I'm a middle school humanities teacher, and I am here to say how proud I am to have been working at Five Oaks Middle School for the past 7 years, teaching 8th graders. 7 years ago when I applied to Five Oaks, I had heard the nicknames given to the school, 5 Tokes, 5 Jokes. A former colleague said her husband loved it there because they were kids like everywhere else, and I was excited for the challenge. When I arrived, I appreciated the welcoming staff. The administration was helpful, and we shared a common philosophy about kids, especially middle schoolers. Relationships make all the difference. In my first few months at Five Oaks, I tried to understand my students when they were often guarded and struggled at school. I began to learn more and more about my school community. All Five Oaks feeder schools are Title I. Most student families have multiple jobs to pay the bills, and the majority have suffered through some sort of trauma that affected them every single day in and out of school. Which brings me to today, December 16th, 2019. My colleagues and I work very hard every day to listen, reach, and help 1,000 Five Oaks students navigate through a day in their lives. There are struggles, but there is wonder, there is joy, and there is success. But I find the most disheartening part of my day is feeling that the larger community of Beaverton and the district continue to feed the perception that Five Oaks is not a good or safe place for their child to attend. I have listened to the board meetings audio from last month's meeting and was completely demoralized listening to the parents and students from Rachel Carson say they did not feel Five Oaks was safe or that the teachers at Five Oaks cared about the behaviors of the students. That we just brushed it off. Nothing could be further from the truth. It has continued to fester in the community. Groups of parents are sending out emails perpetuating the hate towards Five Oaks. These wounding and discriminatory conversations that are occurring at board meetings, and especially school boundary meetings, have to stop. I do appreciate the addition of an extra school campus monitor. However, the negative and false perception.
We're going to have you give the rest to us. Can we just make some copies? But we really appreciate you being here.
I'd be happy to email it to you.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn.
Thank you.
Nadia Hassan, followed by Jennifer Maslin. Oh. Good job, Ben.
Hello. Before I get started, I just want to give a quick shout out. My name's Nadia. Dawn Grodding, Pat McCurry, and Toshiko joined the Bilal Mosque last Sunday to gain input from the Muslim community, and we were so excited to just see that community engagement and have them participate, and people left that event really, really excited. So a little shout out for y'all. Thank you so much, Toshiko. Thank you. I'm a Beaverton School District alum, go Wildcats, a parent to 2 kids in the district, and a former Beaverton School District teacher. I recently saw the 2 openings for the Chief Human Resource Officer and Public Communications Officers and wanted to urge you to consider how you staff these roles as they are integral to building on the equity pillar in the district. As a former teacher of color, one of the reasons I left was because I felt unsafe in my school, specifically unsupported and unable to meet the needs of the kids in the classroom. One of the hardest things was interacting with students who were constantly struggling and trying to give strength and voice to power through their circumstances. I'm not alone in what I went through, and I know teachers who have left and many more who want to leave. The role that teacher training plays in the health of our schools and the future of the teaching profession is profound. I believe rethinking how to staff the district HR team could benefit teachers who are struggling. For example, if you took the Chief Human Resource Officer role and split it into a director role and potentially a recruitment and retention specialist that focuses on the need for teachers of color, we can't just find them, we have to keep them. I hope the district is actively seeking diverse and highly qualified talent through sourcing on social media and putting a premium candidate experience in the recruitment process. To find great talent, we cannot just post and pray for good people to apply. Oftentimes, to garner different results, we need to think differently. We need to step out of our comfort zone of posting the roles we have previously had and reconsider whether these roles are meeting the needs of our students. Sometimes we hire the people we are most comfortable with. Let's take the time to hire the most talented, highly qualified person who's right for the job. Before we do that, let's make sure the role we are trying to fill represents a need we have, our students and their lives that truly depend on it.
Thank you.
We have Jennifer Maslin, followed by Justin Zarati.
Thank you for having me. My name is Jennifer Maslin, and I am a parent of a Beaverton School District special needs child, and I'm here to advocate for those special needs children. I went to the budget listening session at Aloha High School and was asked to come and speak here as well. So my daughter is not only in a specialized classroom in Beaverton High School, but she's also in the mainstream classroom. And what I'm advocating for is support for those mainstream teachers. So my daughter is in the classroom, but needs a modified diploma and modified work. And with that, those teachers are struggling with that piece of it. They have a lot of students in their classroom, they have a lot of work going on, and they need support, and they need resources from the school district to be able to really understand how to modify the work and how to work with those special needs kids that are in the mainstream classroom. And I know we're looking at maybe reducing class sizes, but you need to also think about that piece of it as well. We have wonderful teachers. I appreciate every single one of them. They truly care about all of our kids and want to do their best, but they really need more support in how to modify the work and how to really work with those special needs children within the mainstream classroom, and that's why I'm here today, to really advocate for that.
Justin Zarati, followed by Mahesh.
Thank you. My name is Justin. I'm a parent at Raleigh Hills K-8. I want to start by just thanking you for doing this and for listening, especially for the meeting last month. It takes courage to stand up in front of folks and get yelled at for 2 hours. So thank you for doing that. We may have opposing opinions on this whole process, but thanks for hearing us. Thanks for being willing to dialogue and for being here and for listening. So that said, I want to cast just a little vision for how inspiring and uplifting it could be for us to collaborate together for the Raleigh Hills K-8 option. You know, there are a lot of hard stories out there when it comes to public education right now, locally and nationally. You have teacher strikes, you have funding challenges across the whole country, articles all over the internet about teacher stress and burnout. You have bullying problems that are brought directly to your feet every single month at these meetings. I'm amazed at what you all go through every single time, every single day that you wake up. It takes great courage, so thank you. Despite these challenges, the story of Raleigh Hills is a beautiful one. It is a story of bright students, wonderful teachers, and highly engaged parents, and you've seen us. We are a force. We have a 24-hour news cycle of bad stories. What if the story of Raleigh Hills could be an incredibly uplifting and inspiring one? Inspiring for our city, inspiring for our state, inspiring for the whole country. In the spirit of collaboration, let's dream together about what the Raleigh Hills K-8 option could be. We understand there are some requirements that maybe our middle school is not meeting. Let's work on them together. Standing here are dozens and dozens of parents willing to dream with you, to advocate, to work, to build, and to fundraise. We are ready. And I hope you will give us this option. Thank you.
Mahesh, followed by, I'm not sure if Annika, Reed, Gracie, Ann. Everybody ready for that one?
Not yet, they're still at basketball practice.
Okay, next one will be Pamela Broom afterwards.
Thank you so much for the time. I'd like to make some comments and get some clarifications. In terms of clarifications, I would like to know what was the rationale of building the new middle school where it was built. I opened a public records request asking which schools were planned to feed into the new middle school, and I was told that no schools were identified as feeding into the new middle school. Logically thinking, this does not make sense. I don't send money to Amazon first and then place an order later. So it does seem ridiculous in the least that BSD spent $61 million of taxpayer money without knowing which schools would feed into it. I'm sure this is not the case. I'm sure BSD had at least tentative idea about which schools would be feeder schools to the new middle school. So it would be great if BSD can clarify this. For future, when BSD is planning to build new schools, a process which takes 5 to 10 years from idea to construction complete, BSD should clarify in advance which schools or areas would feed into the new middle, elementary or high schools so that folks can plan in advance if they want to attend a particular school for whatever reason. With regards to the new middle school, if the idea was that new school would address overcrowding in North Bethany, specifically Springville, then the new school should have been built close to the community. If basic common sense is to be followed that schools cater to communities surrounding it, then it's obvious that Springville, which is nowhere close to the new school, should not be impacted by the middle school redistricting and should continue feeding into Stoller. The alternative being suggested is essentially a problem in search of a solution rather than a solution for a problem. The alternative being floated is to send an entire community to a school which is few communities away. The alternative of sending Springville to Five Oaks is just as crazy as sending Springville to Conestoga. Flight times would be crazy, students would spend hours on the bus. So just a final point, just 1 second. I want to highlight that Springville has no representation in the advisory committee, and it would be great if you can get some representation. Thank you.
So I don't know how many of you have signed up to talk about middle schools here tonight. We will take any of the, but there is a middle school boundary meeting on Thursday where you can say, this board, we don't know anything about what is going on. We're following to wait to see how the process. So you are more than welcome, but this is probably not the best time. It probably when we get a little bit further down the road, and we also give you the avenue on Thursday where it's dedicated to the boundary. But first it goes to the boundary committee and to the staff. So that's, for those of you that are waiting to talk about that, I would say that would be probably the best use of your time.
All the last ones are middle school boundaries.
All right.
Let's make it rapid fire. We'll be there at Cedar Park at Thursday. So Pamela Broom, followed by Pavon Akasari. Pavon, followed by Mark Babalani or Bahani. Thank you.
Hello. First, I want to thank all the BSD board and staff, and also the middle school boundary change committee. You know, I didn't think it's going to be such a big problem, such a big complex problem, honestly. You know, I do programming day in, day out, and I try to do this in a program, and I couldn't. You know, it just crashed my system. So it's a challenging problem. So I would give it. So, but I have some requests. You know, some basic design principles that I would request request all the staff and committee to consider. Please encourage neighborhood schools. If the kids can walk, kids can bike, let them do it, because you know it's kind of a solution for a long term. Obesity and everything is just a big problem that everybody is seeing now. So please encourage wherever we can see more kids walk, bike, that's good. Don't, and the second point I want to bring up is don't split schools, meaning linear feeding. If possible, encourage linear feeding all through high. And I want to say that if the linear feeding can be done, at least through middle, that will be nice, because kids are transitioning emotionally, psychologically, physically. And the early teens, it's the toughest time for parents, for kids themselves. And they are closest to their kids in the elementary school. So splitting the elementary school is just not a good way. And I've seen, like, I don't know, like maybe 5 schools getting split in south of Beaverton. I've heard parents complaining about it. So don't split school, elementary school at least to start with, and encourage kids to walk, bike. And I've seen the initiative about the walking bus. If it's possible, please consider that too. That's all. Thank you.
We have Mark, followed by Aditya.
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to point out, as some of you have noticed, the 4 theme maps. The numbers actually don't add up. Most of them have stolen well over the numbers you said. And I think the fundamental cause of that is the process where you give the public like an hour and 15 minutes to draw up the boundaries. It's just completely unrealistic for how difficult that problem is. We have a group of parents that tried to do it offline. I think we spent maybe 20 times that amount of time trying to get a set of boundaries where the numbers actually added up. And I think you need to include more than just what people were able to accomplish in the meetings. You'll get a lot higher quality proposals than what you get in there. The other thing is some of the information people were given to draw the maps was just wrong. Some of the maps, they neglected some of the THPRD trails when trying to figure out what was walkable or not. And that kind of throws off your calculations for which neighborhoods are walkable. People are splitting boundaries along walkable when they don't even have the right neighborhoods. But it does feed into the walk. I would like to second that about the neighborhood schools and the walkability. The kids already get so little exercise with all the screen time, and obesity is such a problem. Getting them to walk to school when possible and safe should be a priority as far as the children's health. The final thing I wanted to say is in the process, I think there needs to be a little bit more enforcement as far as fairness and equal representation. I know in some of the meetings it was more of a free-for-all. It's kind of the equivalent of a polling place, and the first 100 people get to vote and nobody else gets to vote. It looked like Black Friday is more than a democratic process. That's all I have to say, so I'll give my time to somebody else. Thank you.
We have Aditya Kute, followed by Madhu Ranarajan.
Sorry, this is Mahesh representing Aditya because he represented me before. We swapped our spots. I would have much more to add. This is also, I'm representing the BSD boundary mapping. I don't have a lot to add, but I would encourage everybody to look at it more equitably. Yes, walking is something that's very important, but also make sure that everybody in the BSD district travels with a reasonable amount of time to their schools. There have been quite a few articles written, instances we have seen where bullying is something that happens a whole lot during in transit, and that only amplifies when you're traveling for about 45 to 30 minutes every day. And that's starting to happen during the middle school. It's pretty concerning. Just a question. I know this is probably not the place where you'll be able to answer it, but with every advisory committee member selected from 2 elementary schools feeding into a middle school, as opposed when there are like 4 elementary schools feeding into a middle school, how would BSD justify or make sure that the people who are representing in the advisory committee don't get any extra say? I'm not saying that they would or they wouldn't. I'm just trying to understand how it will be justified to make sure that all schools will be represented equitably when decisions are made through the advisory committee. But that's just being a concerned parent asking the question, not suggesting one way or the other. That's all I got. Thank you.
We have Madhu followed by Prashant.
Good evening. I think I'm going to pile on, and you've no doubt seen all the robust debate here on the middle school redrawing. But the more we've been drawing maps and looking at the numbers, it really looks like this could potentially affect every single elementary school across the district potentially. And I want to raise the concern that others raised as well, which is we don't actually have parents from each of those elementary schools represented in the advisory committee. And I just wanted to find out how you'd ensure that things are equitable and there's fairness throughout this process. So that's pretty much all I had. I'll give my time to someone else. Just wanted to make this point. Thank you.
We have Prashant followed by Akil Sharma.
Good evening team, my name is Prashant and I would like to thank all the BSD, all the teachers, everyone for giving us this opportunity to speak about the middle school boundary adjustments. And we definitely heard Becky say that, hey, come back on Thursday. Absolutely, we'll be there, but we wanted to speak a little bit about what we have seen so far. And I'm going to apologize in advance if somebody's going to feel hurt by what I say, but it's not with any ill intention. But the meeting which happened on November 5th, the first meeting where the maps were drawn, there was no representation from Springville and Rock Creek, which are the two schools which are very much impacted by this movement. For whatsoever reason, there was no representation that day. Then the maps which were drawn by whoever came that day, I'm pretty sure they were probably not getting all the information, but it seems like there were more tuned for Findlay to stay in Stoller, which is a concern because the Timberland School has come up in the northeast neighborhood, and one would expect, seeing the geography, that the schools in the northeast, which are mainly the Bonislow, Findlay, then Terraminda, and Cedar Mill, would be the logical feeders for Timberland. So we couldn't really understand that how did Springville and Rock Creek get impacted by this. So that's a concern for us because those team maps, every single one of them put Springville and Rock Creek away. So that is what we want to raise and see, hey, is there something we can do? We can come back and then look at different way of adjustments. I mean, we know not everyone can be happy and satisfied at the end of it, but at least let's give a fair opportunity. Secondly, I think some of my other friends already said on the advisory committee there is nobody from Springville and Rock Creek to represent. So that's a huge concern because the advisory committee has got Findlay and Jacob with no representation. So these are my points. I appreciate it. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Akil followed by Paul Baker.
Hi, good evening. My name is Akhil. I'm here to talk about the middle school boundary. So far, the BSD has drawn 4 themes, Theme 1, Theme 2, Theme 3, Theme 4. Both Theme 2 and 3 are trying to push, like some of my friends said, they're trying to push Springville and Rock Creek, which are very big middle schools, around 5 miles away from where kids live today, which is kind of concerning. Stoller is around 2.5 miles from our house, so which is much more easy for us to deal with. There have been concerns about bullying and whatnot, but the most important thing, I was looking at the statistics today, and I found that in our Springville school, we have 11% kids who are have some kind of disability. So if you have 11% of kids, which is a significant number, maybe around 70 to 80 kids have disability, and hauling them every day 5 miles one way, all the way to 5 Oaks, will not be a good idea. Another thing is Springville is relatively, if you look at the reduced lunch program numbers, we have around 17% kids who are into the reduced lunch program, reduced price lunch program. So it's a relatively poor community, and now if you push this community to 5 Oaks, where kids are already struggling, they have this number, reduced price lunch program, at 61%. So if we push Springville, we are kind of making that school even more poorer. So pushing Springville 5 miles away to 5 Oaks, increasing its capacity utilization to 130%, and data like that, I don't think that will be a wise move. So Theme 2 and Theme 3 are not really working from a data standpoint. So that's what I had. Thank you for your time.
We have Paul
school, middle school if we can. I definitely resonated what the person from Five Oaks said. Totally 100% agree with her. We need to, this is a chance for us to make Five Oaks better. Let's take it. Let's take this challenge and make it work. Also, on the same level here, there was a comment made on the BSD webpage, and it was about a parent who qualified for free lunch, and they went to Stoller, and the kid felt uncomfortable eating the lunch there because there wasn't enough kids that qualified, so she was left out. And it brings me a memory of when I volunteered. My mom, she lives by the beach, and she gave free lunch. They provided free lunch to people, and I said, well, and she said they give it to everybody. It doesn't matter. And I said, why don't you give it to only people who qualify? Well, if that happens, nobody will show up. You know, you provide it to everybody. So that's the kind of inclusivity that the store needs. So this is a chance to make other schools better. And I think some of the stores should move to another, or Finley should move and make another school better. Back to London.
We have Sasha Lohar, followed by Jagan Kakali.
Thanks for the opportunity. I'm sorry, I'm also going to talk about middle school boundary, but that's the topic of the day, I feel. Couple of points I want to make. Good points made by some of the folks here that kids should be allowed to walk to the nearby schools so that they can remain healthy. I would like to point out that we should also think of the health of people who are going to be hauled or being discussed to be hauled at least 30 to 45 minutes. What happens to the health of those kids? Second point I want to make is some people talked about some schools being poorer, some schools being good quality. I would like to encourage how we can make all the schools at the same par so that there is no differentiation between good school or bad school or whatever. So I would encourage also that on the committee that is formed for the boundary, there is a representation, as some of the folks said, from all the elementary schools or feeding schools so that we have points to be discussed from all the communities, not just one community. So I also want to appreciate the committee and all the board for spending time on taking the inputs and discussing about this boundary defining. Thanks.
We have Reagan, followed by Durrani.
Good evening, board members. I really appreciate for your time that you're listening. I'm not going to take too much time just because I'm here to talk about the boundary as usual. I'll let other people speak, but I just want to make a quick point and leave actually. I recently moved from Hillsborough to North Bethany. To be frank with you, the primary reason is the schools, period. Awesome schools, but the only concerning point I want to make here is that why is that there is quite a bit of difference in rating on the middle school and why usually people don't prefer going to certain schools or whatever, right? At the end of the day, after all the discussions and topics and people talking about various things that I hear, I just want to, whether I'm selfish or whatever, I want to make a point that I'm representing from, I live in the Spring School area, and I really don't like my kid travel 5 miles just to get to the middle school. That is a big concerning point for me that just going through the trauma of just imagine myself driving in California for a couple of hours every day to work. So I don't want to make my kids fit in the school bus and just be there just to get to school. Thank you for your time. That's all I have to say.
We have Durrani, and then we'll follow, I think, hopefully Annika is here. Yep. All right, great. We'll do the final. Durrani, you're up now. No, you're first.
Please.
When were the kids?
thank BSD for huge amount of time that you guys are spending for the school boundary stuff and everything. This is really appreciating you guys because you guys are taking a big blow of comments and everything that are coming in and being patient to listen to all of us. I would really appreciate you guys. I'm talking here as a mom. I just don't want my kids have too much stress on them every single morning. Right now my kids take bus to school. Still, I should wake them up by 6, get them ready by 7, and have their food, make sure they have everything, and let them go by 8 to the bus stop. They reach the school by 8:20, and I live just 2 miles away from the school. And think if it's like 5 to 6 miles away, and every day they had to go through this stress, which means I need to wake them up very early and take all the stress. They had to go through the stress, family has to go through the stress, and it's adding stress to the families, kids, and everyone. I would really appreciate if you guys can consider the amount of stress that's going on to kids, and it's going to affect their health for sure. And the second thing is, like, North Bethany is way into the woods, and it's a lot of hilly area. The roads are like up and down kind of thing. So the snow days, the bus routes are going to be horrible. And dropping each kid, it's adding traffic to the community, and it's more safe. I don't feel it's safer for the kids. And a lot of people were talking, oh, all same school kids need to go to same school. I would highly oppose that because kids are going to school to learn socialization, mingle with each other, and learn from there and go from there. So I would highly recommend safety over comfort. That's all. Thanks.
Our last speaker tonight is Annika and family. Kids.
Over the course of a week, we gathered 16 pages of signatures. And all were Raleigh Hill students. We have devoted our time and effort to putting together this project. We hope you reconsider your decision to keep the Raleigh Hills Middle School.
Do you want us to have it? Or
give it to me.
do you guys need a copy of it, or? Okay. Well, we appreciate you bringing it to us and for getting up and speaking. Good job. Thank you. We appreciate everyone being here tonight and for the patience, and we do enjoy hearing from our folks that live in the Beaverton School District. We just want to make sure that everybody is able to be heard, and I do encourage those on the middle school boundary to attend those middle school boundary meetings, because the board is just, that's not our role right now, is to be following. So that's the place right now, is that committee. So, but I appreciate you being here this evening. So with that, we will get on to the rest of our business meeting, Superintendent Comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you've heard tonight, our middle school boundary process that's being facilitated by Stephen Sparks continues to move forward. Sessions have been well attended by community members, and our advisory committee is fully engaged. We continue to receive questions after each meeting, whether it's about maps, correction of maps, and other issues. Our next meeting will be at Cedar Park, excuse me, on December 19th, beginning at 6:30. I went down the wrong pipe.
Oh, I've always wanted to be the superintendent. Okay, thank you, Our next meeting will take place at the Cedar Park Middle School this Thursday, beginning at 6:30. so we encourage you to be there. Next up is our implementation of the Student Success Act. Later in our board meeting, you will hear once again from our Student Success Act planning team regarding our progress. Last week, I was able to accompany our multilingual department and equity and inclusion directors to the mosque, where we were able to engage students and adults in the process. You already heard a little bit about that from you. Good? You want me to keep going? Oh boy. The transition of the Raleigh Hills and the Springville K-8 schools to K-5, the district is continuing to move forward with the transition of the Raleigh Hills and Springville to K-5 schools. The transition period will be at 3 years. If enrollment at the 6-8 grades is sufficient, this will provide parents time and options to prepare and have choices. The middle school scheduling and common experience. As we prepare to adjust middle school boundaries, there is an effort to align schedules and resources to provide equity and similar opportunities for all middle school students, regardless of where they attend school. While we will not attain perfection or please all stakeholders, we will move closer in ensuring an equitable opportunity for all. Mental health task forces. Our mental wellness and behavior task forces are often running under the direction of Danielle Hudson, our student services director. We have task forces representing our elementary, middle school, and high school levels. Members include teachers, specialists, administrators, and other experts in the field. You heard our BEA president refer to that earlier this evening. We're very excited. I'm adding my own personal commentary here now. We're very excited about the hiring of Mike Schofield as Associate Superintendent of Business Services. Mike, just give us a wave. We know we're going to hear from you in a minute. Mike is our new Associate of Business Services. The district has hired Mike as our new CFO and Director of Business Services. Mike has extensive and successful experiences as a CFO in multiple school districts. He has led several successful bond campaigns and is well respected throughout the entire state in regards to school finance. Welcome, Mike. And finally, winter break. Winter break will begin December 21st and continue through January 5th. We hope that the school board, staff, and students get some well-deserved rest and are able to spend quality time with family and friends. This morning, our superintendent was able to meet with the governor and 5 other superintendents to discuss our early childhood education programs and the future of expansion and the quality of our early childhood programs in Oregon.
You're hired.
Good. Any comments for the superintendent? All right, with that, we really enjoy hearing from our principals, and we're going to have school presentations. First one up is Greenway Elementary with Jennifer Whitten.
Hello, it's on. So thank you. So my name is Jennifer Whitten. I have been the principal at Greenway Elementary since last January, so just coming up on a full year there. It's been a great opportunity. I spent probably the first part of just last year jumping in, getting to know students, really starting to build relationships with the parents and the children, and getting to know sort of where the staff was at with their instructional practices. And then spent quite a bit of time over the summer really looking at our test data, looking at our sort of our tracking data for behaviors, meeting with small teams. We have an ORIS assessment that we do as part of a Title I. So working with a small group to just look at the overall assessment of our school. And from that, we're to the beginning of the year to write the school learning plan, which you have a copy of. And then just at the start of the year, I'm heading off to a running start. It's never dull at Greenway. You can come anytime and help us out. But we've got a great school. I have an amazing community of families. I think I've been able to communicate with them, that I partner with them, that we're all in this together. I just finished a conversation with a parent, and she was also expressing concerns about her daughter at home, and what I could tell her was, while it will be hard, I will partner with you, and we're going to do this work together to support your daughter. So I think that with parents, that's been my biggest way to express, is that we're in this together, and that sometimes means some hard, challenging conversations, and it sometimes means just figuring out what we need to do to support their child for their success. I think as well then with our new kinder group of students, supporting those families, helping them. I have a after-school program with the 21st Century Grant. We had an early kinder transition. I met with families in parent groups there as just sort of a way to transition them into their school experience, and doing a lot of parent engagement nights. And then the academic part of our school, I'm really excited this year. We're a lab school with Teachers College, which means that for 5 days, a 3-5 coach comes to our school from New York for the grades 3rd through 5th, meets with the teachers. I'm with them. They're modeling lessons, demonstrating, different techniques, and then we debrief afterwards. Then we have another person from New York as well, and she comes out to meet with the K-2 team. And that has been an incredible experience. And then sort of, in the meantime, they go back to New York, and then I jump back in the classrooms to help support and sort of coach and really just go back and forth with my teachers to think about what we can do for our students. So that's kind of a quick summary of where we're at right now. I know a couple of you had emailed me some questions. The one, Donna, about one was about the multi-tiered framework. So we really thinking this year about sort of our triangle of a multi-tier system, and those tier 1 interventions are really all of the work that all students need access to. So working with teachers across the board, that's in social emotional learning, in reading and writing, and in math. What are our common instructional practices across the board in that bottom part of the triangle? And then the middle part of the triangle is our tier 2 interventions, and what do those look like? And so spending staff time to articulate that can look like work learning on executive functioning skills in a wellness room, or it could be a small group instruction in your classroom. But really thinking about who are our students who need a tier 2 intervention. And so I'm trying to find those commonalities across all of it, and really looking at what does it look like in math, what does it look like in ELA, and what does it look like in our social emotional learning. And then our tier 3, our students who need a tier 3 intervention. And those are our students who require our most amount of deep thinking about the problem before rushing to solutions. And so it's sometimes academic intervention needs, or it's social emotional interventions. Susan?
Thank you so much for being here today. I know it's not easy. So my question is about pre-K and how that's going at Greenway. This is your first year, right?
This is our second year. Pre-K is wonderful. It really is an amazing place. I keep telling the same story over again because we were talking about, what are our strengths that our students come with. And I was in a pre-K classroom, and they were already writing expert books, which is some things our 3rd grade students also write. And a student said to me, he said, I am an expert on the color red. And he had red on every page. And I was like, you are coming to school with all of these amazing strengths. I love our pre-K team. We have an amazing teacher and the 2 para-educators that support the program. I can think of 2 students who really have, last year, just coming to the carpet and accessing the work was a challenge. And this year they are thriving in their classrooms.
So follow up on the pre-K. So how many pre-K kids from last year are now in kindergarten at Greenway? So of them, I don't know how many kids you have in kindergarten. How many of them had pre-K last year?
From that, Susan, I'm not sure exactly. We have 63 kindergartners this year. At least 8 were in our pre-K. But I can email you that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Rhonda?
I just want to thank you for answering my question. I appreciate that. I just know that, I just was wondering, has there been a decrease now since you've been doing this 3-tiered system and kids misbehaving in the classroom and having significant meltdowns? And if it's still about the same or it's increased? I know you said you have people from New York coming in and you're doing this tier program. Are you perceiving that this year is getting better as far as being able to, help students behave better in class?
It is a hard question because just when we get students figured out, sometimes they move. They move. Or we have new students who move in. And so the students who've been at Greenway for a long period of time, we do have structures in place, we understand them, we have different supports in place. So the students right now who are needing to access Tier 3 interventions are either in kindergarten or they're new to our school. Some of them have been there. So it's hard to say because once the structures we put in place, there's change. It is a population that moves around quite a bit. So while we keep looking to see, are we getting better, it's hard to always say that, yes, in this area we are. I know that a couple small changes, like even last year, the mornings were difficult for our students. It just seemed like they came in and it was busy. So we've changed, sort of if they want to come in a little earlier, they can eat breakfast. And I think that we've tripled the number of students who eat breakfast and then are seeing that our mornings are a little bit calmer. So I try to look in that way, like where's a problem that we know we can really look at. Another example is we have one cohort of students, they were in 3 classes last year. And then with our class size allocation, they're in 2 this year, so they're about 28 to 30, and they've typically just had a lot of students with needs. We had to restructure recess and really try and add as much more adult support out there. And I would say in the 2 weeks, we've seen a decrease in physical altercations during that time. So sometimes it's isolating a smaller issue and trying to solve the problem that way.
Well, I appreciate you working on it and being creative, so thank you. Good job.
Ann?
Thank you for sharing your report, and I was particularly interested in your learning plan because it just reminded me that we all need one. I was curious about your equity area of focus, and especially I was curious how it was that you came up with that area of focus.
So the equity of area of focus came up, which was for math. So overall, 33% of our students are proficient, which means that 70% are not proficient in math right now. And I continue to try and talk about that when you have such a large number of students who are not able to access the grade level math standards right now. Where do we meet them where they're at? But particularly for our English learners, that the math proficiency is going back because so much of it is language. And that to me is also an equity issue. Also having the access to a rigorous curriculum and making sure that we're giving them, all of the students and the teachers support to be able to access the curriculum that every school has.
I just want to applaud you for it. I thought it was, I wish it was a more common goal because your school's not unique. And I know it takes a lot of work, but it is a key thing to help our students achieve the equity that we're hoping in the outcomes of our school system. So I hope you'll share that with your team. I'm just really happy to see it.
Leanne?
I wanted to applaud you on the high number of students that report they're feeling cared for, because that is really an important thing in our schools and for the academic achievement of our students. And also the parents feeling like they are valued and informed. But you talked briefly about why you thought the parents were feeling that way, and I just wondered, I know some of the jump maybe happened before you came in or as you were coming in, but what do you think attributed to the students feeling that at least when adult cares? Was something going on different? Were teachers approaching that whole thing differently? What's your input?
You know, I would just say that is because of the school that Greenway is. I really do. I mean, it is in some of the parent comments on our parent survey and the student comments that, 3 adults will greet a child by name before they've walked in the door. So that is, I think, just the culture of Greenway, where the students really do feel that they are welcomed and we're meeting them where they're coming in and supporting them. It was interesting with that high number. My student success coach said, but there's still 4 that don't, so where are they? And we need to find out who they are. So, the lens that we view that in, while we were happy, who are those 4 that are feeling that way, that aren't? So, but I think that is just how Greenway is. It really is a place that, it's a celebration coming in the morning.
Tom?
Thank you for the report. I really appreciate how much detail you've gone into here, and it was great to be able to take a look at your, I'm slipping on the name, but your school plan, I guess, and be able to go through and look in all the detail of all the areas you're targeting. I have a couple of questions related to behavior. So I'm wondering how many room clears you've had at Greenway for the last 3 years?
So I couldn't find the from 3 years ago. Last year we had 31, with 50% of them being in September and October. We've had 4 this year. So there's been a decrease. I will say that our team who's on response respond very quickly when students are escalating, and as well with our teachers, to help them, give them a break so that we can prevent room clears, just so that the learning can continue, and then just sort of providing breaks. So I would say that decrease has come with sometimes fast feet, just have in or being alongside a student in the classroom so that we can prevent that. So we're at 4 this year.
Okay. And kind of as a follow-up to that, has the addition of a student success coach been key for that outcome? And if so, do you feel like in terms of the need in the school for social, emotional learning support, that the student success coach is able to provide for all those needs, or is there more beyond?
So there is still such a need, I would say. My student success coach she does an amazing job. She really works hard on the Tier 1 interventions, really looking at what do all students need, and then working hard as well for the professional development with our staff. But she also really has to help a lot with accessing Tier 3 interventions, because just that when students need more assistance, we find ourselves really busy. It's really hard to, it's such a complicated issue to, with the addition of 1 staff member, we would benefit greatly from more highly trained staff to help our students.
Any thoughts on what that staff could look like, or anything that you think for Greenway would be?
I would say for Greenway, I do think that our paraeducator team is wonderful with the training that they have, and so more paraeducators who are able to help maybe sometimes help regulate students, help people in the classrooms, help with the positive reinforcement as they're building those skills. So I do think that some paraeducator support would really be helpful. Like I had said with our recess plan, just having more staff where I can decrease the number of students in a certain zone for recess has been really helpful. But we don't always have that staff available. I'm an only admin in my building, so I don't like to leave. I kind of feel like it's when my own children were babies and I didn't want to leave them with a babysitter. So I feel sometimes really torn, like, yeah, I don't want to get to that meeting because leaving and not having that 1 extra person. So being an only admin in a building is really difficult. And so somebody who's able to help with some parent phone calls or help to make sure that our building is safe and we're able to continue learning.
Thank you.
Superintendent?
I'm just going to say Jen's being a little bit modest. She went into a difficult situation in the middle of the year, and so I've had comments from her teaching staff who things like said, she's a working principal, she's out there, she's doing the work with us, she never asked us something to do that she wouldn't do. And she does build community. I would agree the Greenway community was strong, but since you become the principal, you've made it stronger. And you had some pretty good mentorship. For those of you who don't know, she was Kathleen's vice principal at Finley, and she has a real focus on academics as well as the social emotional, but really trying to get what each and every child needs.
Thank you. All right, next up, Ashley Hudson from Kinnaman Elementary.
Just gonna take the awkwardly long way around.
Superintendent Comments, and community members. I am Ashley Hudson. I'm the principal at Kinnaman Elementary, and I'm here to share a little bit more about our school learning plan and the school report that was passed along to the board. I know that you guys can all read and have a chance to look through everything, so I'll kind of have some talking points that are a little bit different from what was sent to you last week. I'll start with successes. And to be perfectly honest, when I look at our data at Kinnaman right now, there isn't anything that I feel really comfortable celebrating. While the 22% increase in third grade students meeting English language arts benchmarks was a really big jump between 2017 and 18 and last year, I see that as one data point and one data point only, and so I'm cautiously optimistic about that. That's not to say that there are not good things going on at Kinnaman. There absolutely is. We have a really talented group of educators. Our families are incredibly caring, and our kids are amazingly resilient. The good work we're doing as a collective really isn't yet reflected in our state test scores, but doesn't mean we're not working on it. Recently, we started a push as a staff to start focusing on increasing our reading and writing volume in order to make more progress in English language arts, including a campaign to encourage reading at home. So we're aiming for all students to be reading between 40 and 60 pages per day. I did some informal check-ins and observations that indicate that our students are not yet really writing as much as we'd expect them to be if they were going to be making adequate progress toward meeting not only benchmarks but being ready for middle school. And so it's not terribly surprising that our scores are where they're at right now. The best way to get students reading is to hook them up with books that they really enjoy, and so our intervention teachers and our classroom teachers are doing a lot of work to connect kids with books that they love. When students meet their reading goals, we have a bookstore that they get access to that our intervention teachers really take a lot of time meeting with kids, figuring out what they want to read, and making thoughtful decisions about what goes into that bookstore. In terms of challenges, you'll notice that like many schools in Beaverton, we're struggling in the area of mathematics across the board. We have some issues when you look at our subpopulations, although all of our students are struggling. Our white students have a tendency to do a little bit better than everyone else, and that's a concern of ours, but I'd also say that none of our students are doing all that well yet. One of the challenges I think we've seen as a staff, kind of having that soft start in terms of the approach that we took as a district to roll out the math adoption, really put us in a spot where we're in a place where people are at varying levels of comfort with the math curriculum that we have and just their competency as mathematics instructors. When I came to Kinnaman last year, there weren't really grade levels that were implementing consistent curriculum, and even sometimes on grade level teams, teachers were doing different things. So we did a lot of work with our math TOSA, Carrie Purcell, she's wonderful. We guided staff through a year of professional development where we basically broke apart the math workshop, did PDs on number talks and launching lessons, conferring in math congress last year. We had an opportunity to have her come in and push into some classrooms and demonstrate and model lessons. We had, still really great math studio teachers who also have been willing to even a moment's notice go in, and if they know that someone just wants to see something in action, we can swap them out and they'll go in and teach lessons in other people's classrooms, which has been really wonderful. This year, we're kind of continuing that work, but moving forward, we have put together a team of what we call ourselves elite athletes. We do not yet have Letterman's jackets, but maybe. We're really working on improving vertical alignment and guiding professional development within our staff based on what specific teams are wanting. And then we also continue to collaborate with Carrie in that work. We've made a lot of great strides with consistency in the past year, but we have a lot of work to do still. This year, we also have been really working toward making it kind of public that we are expecting our students to be completed the recommended number of Dreambox lessons per week. And so we're recognizing classes that are leading the pack, as it were, and rewarding students for successfully completing the 5 to 10 lessons, depending on what grade level they're in. Another way that we are exercising our math brains to help them grow at Kinnaman is we replaced our technology rotation for specials with a STEAM classroom with a certified instructor in there. And so really the change there is we've gone from a lot of kind of possible passive learning to hands-on engaging instruction and opportunities for problem solving and critical thinking that are outside of the core. Our kids have really, really loved that addition this year. And this past week, our students have met visual arts, creativity, and innovation, and engineering design learning targets in STEAM by creating pennants and ornaments in a computer program, and then making sure that the design worked well enough to translate to a 3D printer. If you want to come by Kinnaman, we have some of those samples in the hallway. Some of them turned out really, really wonderful. In terms of STEAM, just another kind of woohoo, we just found out on Friday that we were awarded a grant by ODE for STEAM, and we will be joining 9 other schools in the state for a PLC for school transportation planning. We're really hoping that this is going to enhance our workshop models and just make our instruction a lot more engaging at Kinnaman. In terms of other challenges that we are facing, heard it from Greenway as well, as with many other schools, student behavior and social emotional relation is an area that our staff are needing ongoing professional development opportunities in. We do have a school-wide success framework for our staff that details our philosophy, really has a lot of protocols and things in place if students are exhibiting extremely disruptive or dangerous behavior, so that our staff have a common, consistent way to respond to those things. So far this year, we've had 3 room clears. Last year, we had 10. This year, we also have used Title I dollars to bring on an additional counselor, which allows us to put in some of those Tier 1, 2, and 3 supports as well. We have a support team that consists of myself, the counselors, our student success coach, and our assistant principal, and we work together, we come together every day to coordinate services, problem solve, collaborate with other staff, and develop and implement both proactive and responsive strategies and plans to address issues that are related to challenging behavior. There were some questions that people sent ahead of time. So there was one, what does ERLA stand for? ERLA is the district adopted independent reading level assessment. So it's a formative assessment that delivers specific and actionable data. The nice thing about it is that it tells a teacher exactly where a student is, why, and the sequence of skills and behaviors that the student's going to need to really move the dial on that. There was a question about PCT. I have asked the same question. Being relatively new to Kinnaman, it's a professional collaboration team. In other schools, it's known as APAC. Really what it is administrators and intervention teachers, ELB teachers, resource room teachers, counselors, and classroom teachers that come together, and we take a look at data and see how many kids might need certain interventions, and then we strategically group kids. We have a protected intervention block so that no one misses out on core instruction as part of those times. We have to get a little creative at times as to what groups might work best for the student, because we find that there are many students that have lagging skills in multiple areas and would probably benefit from many interventions, but we just don't want to pull them out of the classroom. There was another question about the plan asking what do privatized means. really, we're making a commitment to open up our classrooms to lesson studies, whether it's with TOSAs, administrators, other classroom teachers at the grade level, or even across grade levels, to kind of share successes, challenges, and strategies. Really, we're trying to not only help grow our teachers, but we want our students to have more opportunities for higher level thinking. And the idea behind deprivatizing things would be to share best practices, model best practices, and an opportunity for groupthink. And so, with that, the more people you have in a space, the more ideas that are generated, the more experiences people have to anticipate challenges, and then our teachers can come up with better ways to differentiate and meet the needs of our students. There was also a question about the Dare to Lead glossary. So folks that don't have a copy of our plan, I made mention of some work that we were doing around just kind of strengthening our staff culture and trust within the building. And the Dare to Lead glossary is basically an alphabetical summary of the recommendations, key language, skills, tools, outlined in Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. So it's really, the intent behind that entire book is to inspire people to have a little bit more insightful, courageous leadership. And it provides an avenue for people, for us, we've noticed so far, to have a common language where we can name things, we can talk about things that we're going to work on as a collective, and we can really set some norms that helps us engage in some tougher conversations without feeling as much judgment and without worrying about back channeling, and knowing that clear is kind, and elementary educators sometimes have a difficult time being very direct with people, but that if they're not direct, sometimes we actually don't get to the underlying issue. And so it's been helpful, and it's a work in progress with us. I think I already addressed this a little bit, but much like you asked Jen, you had asked about room clears. I also don't know about the data from 3 years ago, but again, this year we are at 3. Last year we had 10. Should I keep going with the questions you guys asked in advance? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
I just want to thank you for answering all my questions. Appreciate it.
I can keep going with yours if you want. You asked about the addition of student success coaches and if they've helped with behavior issues. Absolutely, I believe so. Our student success coach is a thought partner and someone that our staff can brainstorm with and problem solve with, who is immersed in the work. The nice thing is that she coordinates with other student success coaches. They share ideas for professional development. And I guess from a district-wide standpoint, that means that the professional learning that our educators are getting isn't siloed. It's at least somewhat coordinated, and people are getting common messages. And when we have some schools that have highly mobile populations, it's really good for kids because they're getting kind of consistent things across schools. Teachers transfer from one building to another. It's not like a completely different philosophy on how to do things. And so I do think that there is an opportunity for better alignment across the board there. As to whether or not the severity and number of student behavior issues is continuing to escalate or declining with the student success coaches, I'm not sure that there's a correlation or causation there. I think that regardless of whether or not we have student success coaches, we are going to have a number of kids coming into our schools with adverse childhood experiences, ongoing trauma, a lot of things going on that are causing them to exhibit extremely disruptive and dangerous behaviors. I don't mean to be all doom and gloom there. I just think that's kind of the reality of where we're at. But that said, even over the course of this school year, we've seen tremendous progress with a number of kids who, I think about where they were at in September and where they're at now. it's a much safer, calmer space, not only for them, but everybody around them. And so we are making some growth there. You also asked about other supports that would help social emotional learning. I don't know that this is an extremely popular idea, but I do think if there was some sort of safety care for all type approach that we offered to all staff that have direct contact with students, that would be helpful. Maybe not for the full 2 days, but at least for the first day where staff are learning about de-escalation strategies and things like that. I think if we had more staff members, or hopefully all staff members in the building that were trained in de-escalation strategies, we wouldn't see kids get to the level of their behavior becoming dangerous, which I think would be kind of helpful in responding to some of the staff concerns about behavior and safety. I do think that having more social workers, school psychologists, and resource room teachers would allow for students that have some more complex social emotional learning needs to be served in a more meaningful way. These kids are in our general education environment and are showing oftentimes, at least at our school and other schools that I've worked at, that they may benefit from a higher level of service than they're currently getting, and yet there's the competing demands of those people needing to do a lot of assessments and meet academic needs across all subject areas. So I think that their caseloads are just a little overwhelming at the moment. And then talked a little bit at the board meeting about early learning. I do think that one of the things that we can do as a district to address some of these issues is expanding access for early learning opportunities. And I think that we need to really consider how we can support families as part of a comprehensive plan as well.
Susan?
So I have a couple follow-up questions on the follow-up questions, and then I have one that's relating to the teachers and staff reporting. So in terms of typical ages of the kids that are acting out, is there an age group in particular? You know, I'm specifically asking if kindergartners are having a harder time regulating and first graders than the older kids.
Absolutely, kindergartners are having a harder time regulating than all other grade levels. There are some exceptions. Occasionally we'll have kids that move in or out of the school at other grade levels, but predominantly many of the issues are at the very least K2 and really kindergarten in particular.
Thank you for that. Answers that question. And then the statistic where teachers and staff reporting they contribute to the school decision making, and that percentage really dropped. And I'm just wondering if that's part of the reason you're doing the leader book.
Yes, part of it. And I've had a chance to touch with our group of team leaders. They didn't really have a lot to say about where that statistic may have come from. Had ideas, but not really. Some of which is, whenever there's a change, you get used to doing things in a certain way, and then poof, now it's done. But we do have a process where our team leaders maybe twice a month. There's representatives from classified staff, every grade level, ELD, special education, intervention, specials, and then our support team as well, and administrators. And there are some things that we are like, you know what, this is something that might be best served if our smaller group of team leaders comes together, talks it out, and makes a decision. More often, we're having a discussion, narrowing down some things for focus, asking leaders to go back to their teams to get input, and bringing that back. There are, as you might imagine, sometimes people have a certain level of discomfort of being part of decisions that are made, and ask for administrators to make the final decision, which is totally fine. But we're, as a staff, trying to get to a point where people can be more direct, not kind of give the dirty yes during a meeting and then sit there and try to sabotage something afterward. So yes, we have some work to do, but we're making progress in that area.
You mentioned in your update that you really increased 50% in your English language for that cohort for 18-19. Is there like something special there? Because it was across the board for economically challenged, right? You know, everything went up about 50%. So.
Are you talking about third grade
Third grade,
reading?
yeah, third
Yes.
grade reading, yeah. So is that something special, or is that just an anomaly?
You know, I feel like it's too early to tell. And so that's why I say I'm cautiously optimistic. Certainly that data looks better more recently than others. There's always the possibility that there's a particular grade level that has a tendency to do better than other grade levels. There's the possibility that people have become much more comfortable with the reading and writing workshop, and the instruction has gotten stronger, and the kids have gotten more used to the routines and things like that. So there's a lot of different things going on, and I can't say that there's a singular thing that I can point to that is the cause.
Does that include like your rigorous, like you're saying, 40 to 50 pages of reading? Is that already included, or that's starting to happen now?
That's starting to happen now.
Right.
All right, we thank you for answering all of our questions and for the very thorough report. Thank you very much for being here with us this evening. All right, Mr. Schofield, we welcome you.
Thank you, Chair. Jim Chuck, members of the board, Superintendent Grotting, appreciate your time tonight. Superintendent Grotting suggested I give you a little bit of background about me before I get started on the financial report. So I will tell you I'm a born and raised Oregonian from Roseburg. My first experience with K-12 funding happened when I was in high school. My dad owned a CPA firm, and auditing was the summer family business. So my summer vacation consisted of typically getting the shoebox full of food service fund information and another shoebox of student body information, and we'd reconcile those funds and put the audit together during the summer. When I started as a professional, I started the year before the state school fund existed, so I've been at this for quite a while. I'm very familiar with school finance in K-12. As I tell folks, I've been doing it a long time, and so I'm high mileage. I'm not that old, but I have a lot of miles. Again, I appreciate your time tonight. I'm married to an elementary school principal, recently retired elementary school principal, who helps me with my focus anytime I get out of focus with what's important in our schools. She certainly helps me there. We've got 3 grown kids that still kind of come in and out of the house depending on what's going on in their lives at the time. So again, I'm happy to be here and happy to give you the finance report for this month. So as I understand it, I've been working with Jim Scherzinger, talking about getting me up to speed. This is Monday number 2 on the job for me. So you probably know a little more about what's going on in the finance report at this point than I do. I would say that I would key on where we are with the projected surplus and deficit balance. That's something that Jim says you folks are keying in on. We're providing you monthly updates as to what's changed in that. So as I understand it, the adjustments in the working budget were the allocation of the Regents refund that happened, and that happened during the month of November. We also have a maintenance budget where we allow spending from the unused spending from the prior year to come into the summer to help those maintenance projects that are being done over the summer. And the recent one and the new one is an increase of $500,000 in costs, in salary and benefit costs for administrative folks who are obtain vacation payouts, and those are contractually obligated, but it appears that we haven't been budgeting for those in the past. So as we look at that, we're obviously taking notes. We'll continue to work on that and get those worked into the budget so you folks are fully aware and not surprised by anything, and neither are we. Sure.
Susan?
So the vacation time, well, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here we go. Hard question number 1.
Welcome to you. So are the vacation times coming from people that are retiring and we're paying out those vacations, and we weren't anticipating a certain amount of people to retire, and so
It just appears that we haven't budgeted in the past. So we had a conversation with our finance group just even last week about this, where we kind of know who's eligible, right? How many years they have in and how much vacation time they have accrued. And we can probably put a number to that, so we're going to do that.
So I guess, and are we anticipating more dollars hitting that because more people might be retiring?
We'll look at it. I don't know that. I don't know how many more will. I know this year, probably some folks based on legislation, right? So this may be an unusual year. I don't know that, but we'll go back and take a look and see who's eligible and kind of put a number to it. Not that we'll know from year to year, but we'll at least put a number to it.
Tom?
So, welcome to Beaverton. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
That kind of begs the question, do we have a system for taking a look at our accrued fringe benefits and making sure that the value of all of those benefits is moved through the budget? They're not just sitting there and accumulating, and we're not accounting for that?
Sure. So I believe we have that, generally speaking, but I don't believe we've implemented it in all cases. So we'll take a look at it and make sure we're at least looking at it and taking a shot at what those dollar values are. Again, we may not know all of them, but we'll put a number to them.
Okay. And this number was for retiring administrators.
Right.
Do we have a similar number for retiring certified staff or classified staff?
So I haven't reviewed our license or our certified contract yet, but my guess is not a lot of them get vacation, that they're on a standard contract. And I'm not sure what kind of payouts we have. A typical might be some personal leave or those kinds of things, but I'll have to look at that. And in the classified, we likely do have vacations, but I don't know to what extent those are allowed to accrue and how many days and hours are allowed there. So we'll take a peek at that too.
Thank you.
Donna?
Hello and welcome again.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm a process person and systems person, so obviously there was some sort of process you went through in order to discover this. So could you please explain that? And obviously this is a process that we're going to move forward with, so hopefully we'll discover anything else and we won't have any more ponds like this again.
Sure. So I believe, again, as Jim Scherzinger has set up, this working budget, taking a look at variances on a month-to-month basis is critical. It's very helpful in the process. And so what happens is that as we're looking at a month and saying, what's different, what's changed from last month, why are we paying out a little more money this month? That was the reason why, and finance and budget staff brought it to my attention. So that's how we'll catch those moving forward, or what are those variances.
So, coming in with fresh eyes, kind of like what we did with Jim, came in at a critical time. We like to think that we're looking at a piece of paper and we're asking the right questions, but we don't always know to ask the right questions, but still do our homework. Are there ways with checks and balances that we as a board could better help you to set yourself up for success so that we do not have surprises and we are getting ready? Because obviously this is we're in a whole new, we've always been on a growth and we could make up things because we were on a growth. Now we don't have that growth. So we really need to be sure about the buckets and where the money is going. Can you elaborate?
So yeah, I think a good example of that is what you're doing tonight. You're taking a look at where the variances are. You're asking about, how and why did they occur, and what we're doing about it. Those are the exact questions you should ask on a monthly basis, and you should take a look at this report and ask those kinds of questions, because that helps us improve and that helps us do a better job and helps a greater account in terms of where we are financially as a district. I think you're right. I think when you're in a growing district, that can hide a lot of issues that you have. You're able to get over them because you grow. Flat to down enrollment districts, much more sensitive to changes in what's going on in the organization. So it's critical that we look at it every month.
Donna?
So anyway, I'll just ask the question. So, since we have a little bit of a deficit here, how do we go about making adjustments in order so we no longer have the deficit?
So those conversations will start tomorrow morning with cabinet in terms of, again, second Monday on the job. But based on what I'm seeing and where we need to go, you're right, our general fund has a structural deficit that needs to be fixed. It doesn't appear, based on forecasts, that we're going to grow our way out of that issue. So given that, we're going to have to do some heavy lifting and make some changes to get the general fund in line moving forward.
So I guess we don't know yet if that's going to result in cuts and where those cuts will be potentially, but I'm assuming we're going to find out about it here at the school board level at some point.
So, yeah, I would agree. It'll kind of be a two-step process. We've got to deal with that general fund deficit and get that squared away, but at the same time, there's significant investment coming, right? Yeah. So with the significant, I'd kind of like to get the structural deficit piece out of the way in the coming month or so that we can then focus on the SSA dollars that are coming and where we ought to focus those dollars. And I'll be relying on, you got a great team, good cabinet, they're gonna help get us through this process as well.
Well, we are glad to have you. I was at the Leadership Summit today with people from around the state, and everywhere where I got to say I was from Beaverton, I was told how fortunate we are to have you here in our district, and that you come with great credentials and you did great things in Gresham Barlow, and we are very fortunate to have your expertise join us here in Beaverton. So welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Sparks, Middle School Boundary Adjustment Project.
Sheriff Timchuk, board members, good evening. For the record, my name is Stephen Sparks, Administrator for Long Range Planning here in the district. I don't want to read my memo to you, so I just wanted to highlight just a couple of things. One, the comments that you heard here tonight have been heard and have been heard by and expressed to the advisory committee. We have, as of today, over 1,200 comments that have been submitted online. And we are committed to a transparent process. So everything we receive is being published on the webpage. Materials for the December 19th advisory committee meeting is up on the webpage. And we are compiling the comments that were received on a weekly basis to put those online as well. I want to assure you and the public that there have been no confidential meetings. There has been no secret negotiations. There has been nothing of the sort. Our advisory committee has met 3 times. Thursday will be the 4th time, and it will be their first chance to roll up their sleeves and dig into the data and start working on what will be their recommendation ultimately to the superintendent in March, April of 2020. So with that, I will conclude my comments and take any questions that you may have.
Donna?
I was just sort of curious. I know that there's a process involved where how people are elected, or I should say appointed, to be on the boundary committee. And I was wondering, because it was brought up here that a couple of schools weren't represented. So I was wondering, what was that process that determined who would serve on the committee? That's what I was wondering.
So we had about a 6-week period for recruitment. We sent school messenger notices out. Our middle school principals went out and at their back to school nights, trying to get people to apply. We had elementary school principals do the same thing. We were out there trying hard to find people. I think if you come to our advisory committee, you're going to be very pleased with the breadth of representation at the district in terms of who's on our committee. I think this is the most diverse committee I've ever seen with the school district. And in terms of selecting who is who, for most of the middle schools, we only received 2 applicants, sometimes none, and we had to go and find people. For Cedar Park, we had approximately 12 applicants, and for Stoller, we had 5. That meant we had 3 from Findlay, 1 from Wismar, 1 from Springville, 0 from Sato, and 0 from Rock Creek. We interviewed everybody. We reviewed all their application materials. We spoke with principals out there. Ultimately, it wasn't an easy decision. I mean, there were a lot of really good people who wanted to volunteer. And in order to, keep a manageable size committee, we said 2 per middle school rather than 2 per elementary school.
It seemed like, do you think that all the people that come to the meetings are familiar with policy JC? Because there was a lot of questions about, proximity and rallying and all that. So has everybody been educated on the overall board objectives that the committee has to follow?
So basically, every meeting we have had, up on the screen in the materials that have been presented, the board, 4 board objectives, and policy JC with the 4 factors that are in there. What I think is perhaps frustrating to people is the process that we've created for this. Learning from the high school experience, where one of the main points of feedback that people did not like was there being a kickoff map, a staff prepared map. And that gave it the impression that the district already knew what we wanted to do, and therefore we were out pitching, this is what it's going to be. And the advisory committee and the public was kind of going, what role do I really have? So for this process, what we did is create a process where the first phase is the community sharing their ideas for what middle school boundaries should be. There's some good things that have come out of it, some maybe not so good, but this is an iterative process. We are not jumping to a conclusion in the first month of this project. We were listening. That is the goal of the first 2 meetings, first 3 meetings, was to listen to the community. We have been hearing loud and clear from the community. The advisory committee will now take that testimony, take those maps that the community provided to the district, and start evaluating what those ideas are and come up with their own. This is, you've heard about the 4 theme maps. It is not selecting 1, 2, 3, or 4. The theme maps are just ideas. And the advisory committee will come up with a recommendation that may or may not resemble any of the themes or anything that the public has provided. So what we're doing in terms of this process is we listen first. This next meeting on Thursday will be, okay, let's start evaluating based on the board objectives only. And then we're going to add more layers as we go along to say, okay, this idea has merit, so let's start looking at the transportation, the socioeconomic status. Let's look at walkability. Let's look at all those factors that are in the policy to see, okay, does it still hold water? And we won't know until we get to that point, which will be in January.
Ann?
Just for my own clarification, I know that you needed some extra time. I'm sure that the amount of data that our community is looking for in order to make an informed decision is gargantuan, and I know that this is a problem that will not have an easy solution. I think as soon as the site for the new middle school is chosen, that was a guarantee. So my question is, looking at this aggressive timeline, do we feel like we're going to be able to work through this process with the right amount of information? Do we anticipate, how do we set expectations for what will happen at each stage of the process?
Thank you for that question. I think that is a very good question for us to consider. I have a schedule in mind in order to provide the most amount of time for transition planning for the middle school. That's a full school year for that, and to get to a decision in front of you before the end of this school year. If we need more time, I want the advisory committee to tell us, hey, we need more time with this. I put the schedule out there to set expectations. If the advisory committee is feeling, hey, we really need to consider this, have more time to consider this, we'll give them the time. I don't want to turn around and say, oh yeah, we have an open date and we'll get to it eventually. And we need to give people some certainty, because it is certain that Timberland is going to open September 2021.
The one question I have is going back to the board objectives that we've discussed many times when we were putting this together. The definition of permanent capacity. Could you just remind me again what the definition is of permanent capacity?
For permanent capacity, our operational definition is that it is the permanent structure. So it does not include portables for several reasons. One, first and foremost, is portables are supposed to be temporary. We're supposed to have enough room within the building for the students that are attending there, and that we bring in portables for those temporary problems where we have more students than what we can handle in that building, because it takes time to pass a capital bond and find a site and build another school. So sometimes that temporary might be, a year or two. It might be quite longer in the case of Westview. So the situation up at Stoller has been a problem that the district has been dealing with for years, and that I think two superintendents prior to Superintendent Bride had meetings up in that neighborhood to address overcrowding in those, not just Stoller, but the other schools in the area, and that we are committed to delivering on that overcrowding problem. As we've talked about, Stoller right now is larger than two of the high schools and doesn't have the space that a high school does. So we need to do something, just for equity's sake, and if anything, to create a middle school environment that's similar, if not the same, across the district.
So did we use the word permanent capacity in the same, when we were looking at the high school boundaries? Did we even have a reason to use permanent capacity in the same definition?
I was not here until the very end of the high school process, so I would have to go back and look at the materials in our files to answer that question.
In my recollection, Becky, the board objectives were different. That the permanent capacity was not what the goal was set by the board.
So my point being, this is a newer definition that we are using. It's not.
Again,
and it's our board objective, so it's not. I just want to making sure that we have the same definition of permanent capacity.
I would, as I said, I would have to go back to the record for the high school to answer that completely.
Clarifying question to that, because I think
Put your mic on there.
I think your point about portables, though, I think portables were included in the high school.
The goal was to reduce the how full the school was. I got the lingo wrong, but the board did not set the goal as a percentage of permanent capacity. Rather, it set the goal of capacity.
Right.
Yeah,
It was a difference set by the board and understood by the board that going into the high school process, that we were not planning to take away all 16 portables at Westview that had been there since the school opened.
Thank you. Any other questions? We'll look forward to hearing from you again, Mr. Sparks. Before our break, we're going to hear from Student Success Act updates from the team.
Good evening. We have been working hard with our Student Success Act, and for the last month have been taking in input from staff and teachers and community members, and we've just finished phase 1 of our Student Success Act, moving into phase 2 in January. So David's going to tell us a little bit about our convenings that we will be starting in January. We're scheduling them now, and there's 3 different committees that will be working.
Yeah, thank you. So the kickoff of phase 2, as we've discussed before, is these sort of content convenings, panels of 20 to 25 sort of expertise areas, one on instructional, one on student mental wellness and behavioral health, and one on equity and community partners. Those will meet beginning the first full week in January, the second week in January. That week and the subsequent week as well, we're meeting afternoon and evenings. The ESD has graciously offered their facilities, and we'll be using some of their support dollars to feed those panels of community partners joining us when those overlap meal times, to really provide a conducive atmosphere for people to roll up their sleeves and get some hard work done. The goal of those folks would be to sort of create an actionable draft of program based on the needs assessment and our overall achievement data across the board, aligned with the student investment account that we would then take to more sort of demographic-based community convenings after that for further review. But that's the sort of next step right in front of us, is that drafting process.
With that, we'll take your questions. Any questions? Great. I look forward to hearing from you next month. can get back to our business meeting here. First up, from our audit committee, is Rob Drake to speak to us about the comprehensive annual financial report, otherwise known as the CAPR. And Jason, welcome, Jason.
Madam Chair, board members, good evening. I've had the pleasure to work with 3 of you on the audit committee, and I would also like to thank you for allowing me to continue my service. For a guy who just prepared his 30th budget this last year, municipal budget, it's nice to take some ownership of this budget, but I must tell you, and you already know it, but it's a very complex, comprehensive document. And I'm pleased to say your CAPR has again a clean, unmodified opinion. And Jason has not paid me or asked me to say this, but he and his staff do an excellent job, and you can know that everything is properly scrutinized, and it's a fully and fiscally transparent document, and that people may agree or disagree with how you decide to spend money, but your public can know that it's being spent according to state law, and it's being fully accounted for. And as a municipal leader and somebody who continues to prepare budgets, that's the best you can do for the people we all serve. I happen to serve constituents in the west end of the county, but I'm a taxpayer in the district, and I have great confidence in the work that continues to be done. So, compliment to your staff. They also continue to receive annually awards, financial awards from peers in the industry, and that too is really important. Third-party folks look at the budgets, they're prepared correctly, they're handled carefully, and if you like numbers like I do, it's sort of like the big night out when you're reading the budget, but I'm proud that to be in a small way associated with it. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if Jason has something to say.
Susan?
I know I've been on the board a long time, and I appreciate what you've done for us over the years. But I do have a question about the CAFR and versus what we had. Our budget last year was a little confusing, like some of the dollars weren't quite there that we were expecting to be there. And so I'm just wondering, we have this very clean report when we've had some, I think it was $12 million, that we eventually had a shortfall of. So I'm having a disconnect, but I'm thinking the CAFR is not meant for the dollars that were.
There are 2 separate processes, and I would rely on Jason to talk to you about what happened. You should know, too, that when we meet with your independent auditor, the state requires this audit every year. We talk to the auditor privately, we ask staff to leave, and I have a separate conversation with the auditor by phone, and they're not uncomfortable with that situation. I mean, anytime having managed municipal budgets, you want to be sure at the end of the day, if you budgeted $100 and you said 10 of it was going to be left in contingency, you want $10 left in contingency more if you can possibly do it. But that is a different situation than the money being properly accounted for, meeting state budget law, and also balancing as long as the funds are identified. And I think I would rely on him to explain the difference for you.
Yeah, so the CAFR is the annual report that shows actually how much was spent. It's an audited document that the auditors take a look at your procedures and how are you tracking the funds, how are you cash handling, what are your procedures from HR and the hiring records to how are you reporting the stuff that leads into the state school fund and leads into our payments from the funds, and making sure that everything ties. They do all the cross-checking and making sure that things are being reported correctly. Things such as expenditures are being accounted for in the proper funds that they're attributable for. of that nature. They also do look at our budget compliance and see how did we do compared to our lawfully budget adoptions. But that's in addition to watching how the actual audit and the tracking and record keeping is done.
Tom?
I know that Mr. Scherzinger's report was great in looking at the difference between, what had occurred with the adopted budget and where we ended up at the end of the year. I'm wondering if there's anything in the notes to the CAPR that's also going to kind of take a look at that. It was submitted to the auditors, or if we're going to be looking at a completely different document for those answers.
It would be, Jim's document probably the best source for that. The CAPR is very regulated on what can be included in the notes and what cannot be. There's a little bit of discussion in the management discussion, but the majority would have been Jim's document.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the capital? None?
I move that we receive the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended June 30, 2019, now on file in the business services. I second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. The board receives the comprehensive annual financial report that was presented and ended on June 30th, 2019. It's been, is there any discussion? With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the consent agenda. I second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the board approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Individual school board comments. Tom?
I had the privilege of taking part in mock interviews over at ACMA this month, and I was so impressed with the process and also with the students' preparation. It was an amazing thing to see how much work had gone into their resumes, their cover sheets, how prepared students were from like their body language to the stories that they told about what they wanted to do. And I just thought that when I'm thinking about CTE and career readiness, I thought this was just a wonderful program, and I was so impressed with that. I also had an opportunity to visit Chehalem Elementary School this month and engage in a great conversation with the teachers there about equity and what it means to have equity in funding in our district. People brought up some pretty amazing comments. They were talking about what class size means in some of the higher SES schools that they've taught in compared to the lower SES schools, and the larger impact that they're seeing. And they wanted to make sure that that message was being heard at the district, and we're sure that it was. But I really appreciated a conversation that was so focused on the students and getting strong outcomes, and how much time and effort that those teachers there are putting into the work that they're doing. So, two great experiences in the district, and wanted to share those.
Leanne?
I just have two quick comments. One is I just wanted to show support for the Five Oaks teacher, Sandra, that came tonight. I know that there are great teachers and staff there, and I really appreciate how the district and administration is wrapping services around there and really reaching out and helping that school. As you know, it's near and dear to my heart, and my children went there, and it's in my neighborhood, and so just a shout out to all the good work that's going on there. I also wanted to highlight Maureen Wheeler sent out an email this afternoon about 6 focus groups that are coming up on student mental health behavior, and I responded and asked if it's trying to solicit staff to come, and I asked about board members and how we can do that, because it's through teacher, what's it called, teacher source, and we don't have access and all that. So I just wanted to let you know that we are invited. And if you are interested in attending any of them, let Maureen or Danielle know, and they'll just make room for us. And I think it would be great to have us spread ourselves out and attend. And I want to apologize for not being here last month and missing it, but as you know, I was able to accomplish my life goal of making it to Everest Base Camp, and probably about around the time you were meeting, I was summiting. So
That's great.
Donna?
I forgot to mention that a number of us were able to have lunch for the Stanford Children Luncheon, the Beat the Odds Luncheon, and there were just some very phenomenal stories of students and their achievements. It actually made me cry. It was awesome. So there's lots of great students out there, lots of great stories, and I really feel really proud that I'm here at the Beaverton School District, hopefully in one small way, helping students succeed. So.
Oh my gosh, the second person.
Ann?
I have a few things that I wanted to review. The first, I'm going to apologize in advance because my order's kind of haphazard. But I was so intrigued tonight to hear a couple of things in our public comment that I thought, I'm not sure I've ever heard advocates for before. Boundary comments I expected, but we were privileged to hear tonight by people who are focused on how to better support our special ed students through integration into mainstream classrooms, which I thought, I don't think I've heard that before, and kudos to our community for really bringing that to the forefront. And I don't know if the rest of you caught, we heard the words developmentally appropriate practice. And I thought, I'm so happy. We're starting to be able to see things that I know are student focused and that our community and staff are asking for these things that we know that are best for kids is really a phenomenal thing. And I probably should have finished with that phenomenal work because now I have to talk about some hard things, which, because I serve on the, and I think we call ourselves the Finance Subcommittee.
Finance and Business Strategy.
And I'm privileged to serve there with Eric, and because Becky, I'm not sure she trusts us, but she watches us like a hawk, which I think is a good thing. But a couple of things I just wanted to give the rest of the board an update on the discussions that we've been having there, because it'll be a preview of other important work that we need to talk about. The first is that we have been taking a hard look at our reserves policy, and we have a recommendation that'll be coming to the policy committee next, and then with the intention of bringing it to the board for review in January, where we'll be having a full discussion about how it is that we attack our reserves. I think a priority for our committee has been to make sure that we have policies that we follow. And so we want to make sure that we're very clear and provide guidance, but that we're also making sure that we are not encouraging continued bad behavior. And so we'll be bringing that to the board. You can look forward to that good time shared by all in January. And the other thing that we've been spending quite a bit of time on, as you're aware, are bonds. We have moved into thinking about future bond planning for construction and maintenance of our buildings. We have heard recently a recommendation from our staff to approach our voting community in November of 2021. Their recommendation is based on their belief that that would give us sufficient time to prepare a recommendation for the community to provide ample community involvement in that decision. It's also framed, frankly, in a concern that we need some time in order to increase and build the trust that we have with our community, that we understand our community's needs in the buildings and maintenance, and that we can be entrusted to spend their money wisely. I know that that is a responsibility that this board takes strongly, and that it was staff's recommendation that we give ourselves a little bit of time in order to build that trust. I'm sure there'll be more conversations about that, but we wanted to make sure that you were well aware of the conversations that were happening. And like many of the commenters, I also just wanted to thank the board and staff, because this is a great team to be a part of.
Eric?
Two comments. So, like Tom, actually, I did some real interviews with some people from the BSD, so I'm always very impressed by the product coming out of the schools in this district. Westview, Beaverton, Sunset, they're all great. And then my little small business needs some new energy, so I'm really always proud to interview people from my alma mater or similar. So that's one thing. Well, it's a little bit north, sorry. Someday. And then, as Ann mentioned, the Finance and Investment Strategies Committees, the district staff is really putting together kind of two proposals or paths that we can have for securing the next facility capital bond. One was somewhat aggressive, and it was May of 2021, so it wouldn't give them as much time to prepare the reports they have from the facility team on seismics and other needs of the district, as well as Ann mentioned earlier, a couple more quarters or a year of smart fiducial responsibility will earn the trust of the community and ensure that we can get this. And so their recommendation was on November of 2021, and so that would prepare, staff have more time to prepare and to get the community more involved. And that they felt that maybe 7 meetings would be really good with with all our constituents around the district. And if we rush the process, it might not give us as much time. So no final decision yet, but something that we're going to all want to talk about, because we know that we have more needs, more projects for the safety and learning schools of our district. A lot more work to do. So that was a really good meeting tonight, and thank you, district, for putting it together.
And we'll just finish this evening. I want to first, we have a lot on our plate here in the district. And everybody is being so professional, whether it be middle school boundaries, whether it be listening to our different schools and their different needs. I know it's a lot of extra meetings. The Student Success Act takes extra meetings. There's just a lot of extra work, and I really want to thank the staff for putting in the extra time and going the extra mile. I want to thank our community for stepping up to serve on our different committees. That's a lot to ask people in our community, but for the engagement and for the extra time. And I very much want to thank this board. Not only do we come together for the board meetings and we come prepared and professional, and we ask lots of good questions, but our community they are passionate. We've been taking a lot of side meetings beyond our regular meetings. I appreciate all the committee work that folks, the different committees that you're serving on. I thank you for being there and taking that seriously. I need us all to have a restful winter break, because we come back in January hitting the floor running. We've got some really big decisions that need to be made here in this district, and we have a budget to put together. We have middle schools. We have some bargains that we have to do. We have the Student Success Act, and we just never know what's around the corner. So we need to rest, enjoy our families, enjoy our friends, and maybe not try to think about school board work all day, every day, but in January, February, we've got some real big decisions to make. And I was thinking about a year ago at this time, and we were faced as a district a very difficult time. We were getting some outside folks that were making our lives very difficult, and I remember what stress there was, and how, yes, there's stress, and I wish we could make every single one of our students and families happy with every decision, but it is a relief to know that the decisions we're making our kids, we're not putting them in harm's way, and that everyone is safe. And it's a lot better place to be than it was a year ago at this time. It really is. So I wish you all a happy holiday season, and get some rest. And with that, we are adjourned, and we will come together. We're not on a Monday. It will be Tuesday, January 21st, year 2020 at 6:30.